Hello, Ashbourne Young Writers. This is Joe here in my study, shut away, as I'm sure you all are shut away in your homes. And I hope you're all doing really well, and I hope that we get to see each other again soon. But until then, we are going to try out these writing workshops by video. So I've got today 3 writing prompts for you to work with. So the first one I like to call imaginary rooms. Okay, using a room in your house. I'm going to use the study because that's where I am, but you can use any room in your house. It might be the living room, the kitchen, your bedroom. What you're going to do is find 6 objects. Doesn't really matter what the objects are. Try and make them as different as possible, though. That would be useful. And you're going to write them down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 objects. And then for each object, you're going to write down what is it like and what does it do. So let me give you an example. This is an object that I've picked. It's a lamp. So I've written down lamp. What's it like? Well, it's black and it is dusty because I don't do enough dusting in my study. So it's black and dusty. What does it do? Well, a lot of objects don't really do anything, do they? They just kind of sit there. But maybe think about it. If this was a person, what would it do? And it does this, you see. That bit does that. And I like to think it's sort of nodding. Yeah, so that's what I think my lamp does. It nods. My second object is this, a cushion. What is it like? Well, it's square. What does it do? Well, again, it doesn't really do anything, does it? It just sits there. And actually, I'm going to use that in this. I was thinking, well, if that was a person, what's it doing? It's just kind of lounging in the corner. Yeah. So that's what you're going to do for each of your 6 objects. Okay. This might make it clearer. I hope you can see that. Okay. So I've got a lamp. It's black and dusty. It nods. A cushion. It's square. It lounges around in the corner. Okay, so that is the first task. You're going to do that for 6 objects, and you can now pause the video, and when you've done that, come back to it. And every time there's a pause, I'm going to do this spin in my chair. So pause the video. Right, welcome back. Hopefully you've got your 6 objects and you've written down what they are like and what they do. The next thing is, we're not going to use those objects. We're going to create an imaginary room. So you need to now start thinking about a character that you might like to write about rather. And this might be a character in some kind of imaginary world somewhere, or it might be a character in the real world somewhere. It's up to you where you take this, but let me give you 2 examples based on what we're doing. For the lamp, you're going to take your first object and you're going to look only at the description. So if you remember my lamp, it was black and dusty and it nods. Now, in your imaginary room for your new character, it's going to be something that's black and dusty and something that nods. But what is it? Now, the character that I've come up with for this one, I think might be in an imaginary world, because I've decided that maybe the object that we're talking about is a crow or a raven. I suppose it's not really an object, is it? It's an animal. But what if it was a pet crow or raven? It's black and dusty. It nods up and down. I think we kind of get a sense of the character that I might be aiming for here. It seems like it could be some kind of witch or something, maybe. So that's one option. If, however, you could decide to go for a character that's a bit more in the real world. For example, for the cushion, if you remember, my cushion was square and it was kind of lounging about in the corner of the room. What else is square and could lounge about in the corner of the room? It could be a broken phone, for example. Maybe not quite square, it's more of a rectangle, isn't it? But I think we could go with that. So it's a broken phone sort of lounging in the corner of the room. Okay, so for each object, have a think about what other object could match that description in your imaginary room. Okay, now I've given 2 different characters there, the kind of witch-like character for the first one. The second one, I'm not sure who that is yet, but it's someone very much living in the real world with a broken phone in the corner, probably because they've hurled it at the wall or something, I think. For you, for your exercise, I think you could take each of the 6 objects and they could belong to the same character. So think about who your character is, and then think about what 6 objects are in their room based on the descriptions that you've given of your own objects, but these are the completely new objects. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So away you go with that next stage of the exercise. So you can pause the video again, and I'm going to spin round in my chair once more. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully you've got 6 objects now in your imaginary room for your imagined character, and you might really get a sense of what is going on in the world and the life of this character now based on these objects. All you're going to do now is take those ideas from those objects and start to write about them. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. So for the one about the witch, and that came from my lamp, if you remember, it was black and dusty. It nodded up and down. I thought, okay, that's not a lamp, that's a pet raven that's black and dusty and nods up and down. Here's my first sentence. Grey Malkin rustled his dusty feathers and seemed to nod in agreement. There's my first line of this story. I'm not quite sure where it's going from there, but this is clearly the witch's maybe pet called Grey Malkin, who's rustling his dusty feathers, nodding in the corner, and the story's going to go from there. I might have moved on to my next object there and continued the description of this place wherever your character is living. I'll give you an example for the other one. If you remember, it was based on my cushion, which was square and which was lounging around in the corner, and the square thing that lounged around in the corner became a broken phone. My first sentence for this went like this. She glared across the room at her shattered iPhone, which seemed to lounge in the corner, taunting her. So a completely different situation. This isn't my house anymore. This is my character's house. It's a new object, and that's my starting point. And then maybe I would go on to the next object to explore that character in a bit more detail. Okay, so that's where this imaginary rooms task goes. So now you can go away and spend however long you like writing up your character in their imaginary room, and I'll be really interested to hear what happens. You can pause the video now, and when you come back we'll start the next activity. So it's time to spin again. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed writing about your imaginary rooms. The next task today is based on snow, which sounds funny because I'm looking out of my window now and actually it's not particularly snowy. Well, it's not snowy at all. But on Sunday, when I went out to take my daily walk, it started to snow in that very, very fine snow. Tiny, tiny little, almost like hailstones, but very, very light, swarming around everywhere. And it made me think of that something that I'd heard about Inuit people, who are Inuit people are the ones who live, I think they live mainly in Greenland and parts of Canada and the US, I believe. And I remember hearing once that in certain Inuit languages there are loads and loads of different words for snow, depending on what kind of snow it is. So I looked this up, and actually there's some debate over it, but it does sound like this might be the case. And I've come up with a list of, well, I haven't come up with them, someone came up with a list of 31 words for different types of snow. And you should find that sheet of those 31 terms along with this video. So have a look at that. There's some extraordinary, really interesting words to describe the very specific types of snow. And I thought we could write some snow poems using some of these words if you want. So I've chosen one of the words. It's this one. You'll find it on the list. Pixic. What a brilliant word. Pixic. And pixic, if you look on the list, is describing a kind of blizzard-like snow. So that's going to be my starting point. And I thought some of these words have such interesting sounds, and there might be some really interesting rhymes that we could make from them. So, for example, the first line of my poem, I think, is going to go, Pixic swirled as we finished our picnic. How about that? Pixic swirled as we finished our picnic. So have a look through that list of words for snow and take your pick. You could use more than one if you want, or you could base one poem around just one of those words. Or you don't have to use these words at all. You might have another idea for a poem about snow. But see where that takes you. So that is the next task. You can pause the video now and have fun writing your snow poems. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed writing your snow poems, and I can't wait to read some of them. The final writing activity today, I like to call out of the boxes. Out of the boxes. What you need to do first of all is divide your page into 4 like this. 4 boxes. So one box you'll see at the top, it says like. The second box says don't like. The third box says emotions and moods. And the fourth box says out of the window. Okay. So that is the first thing. You can pause if you want to get this page divided, but I'm going to assume you've now done that. Okay. Using this, these 4 boxes that you've just created, you're now going to write down 4 things in each box. 4 things you like in the like box. 4 things you don't like in the don't like box. 4 emotions or moods in that box. And 4 things that you can see out of the window in the last box. And for that last one, have a really careful look out of the window. See if you can pick something maybe slightly unusual that you might not have expected to see out of the window, because I bet you can if you look hard enough. You could look out of different windows as well if you want, and just see which window has the best view of the most interesting things. So that is the first thing to do, and you can pause the video while you do that. Okay, so you've got your 4 things that you like, 4 things you don't like, 4 emotions or moods, and 4 things out of the window. I'm going to give you one example of each that I wrote down. Things that I like. Well, I like my little dog. So my dog was on my list there. Things I don't like. Well, one of the things that bothers me a lot is very loud noises. I don't like loud noises, so that was one thing in my don't like list. Emotions or moods. I was trying to think with these, and I should have said this before, you can adapt them if you think it'll help. I try to be quite specific about my moods, so instead of just saying angry, I've gone a little bit more specific and I've said irritated, let's say, okay. Or instead of saying happy, you might be more specific and say joyful, for example. There's something a little bit different about them. Don't worry if you haven't done that. It will work for the sort of more basic emotions as well, but you might want to just think about those in a bit more detail maybe. And finally, out of the window. For out of the window, one of the funny things that I could see was a wheelie bin that has blown over. So, those are 4 of my things. Hopefully you've got 4 for each box. What you're going to do now is choose one thing from each box. Obviously I've only written one thing, so I've only got 1 to choose from, but hopefully you've got 4 to choose from. So you can circle the one that you want to pick. So I'm going to circle my dog, loud noises, the wheelie bin that's blown over, and irritated. And those 4 things that you've circled are now going to be the starting point for a short story. Okay, so I'm going to write a short story involving my dog, something to do with the loud noises, something to do with a wheelie bin blowing over, and something to do with feeling irritated. Hopefully that will give me some good ideas for this short story, and hopefully when you do the same, choosing your 4 different options from your 4 different boxes, you'll have a really interesting starting point for the story. And that concludes today's activities. So I hope you've enjoyed doing some bits of writing today, and what would be absolutely wonderful is if anybody wanted to share what they've written. And I suggest the two ways of doing that could be, if you've got time and access to do this, you could type it up and send it over. If you've got a scanner, you could at home, you could look into scanning that and send it over like that if you didn't want to type it up. And what I would love to do is to be able to read anything that you want to send over. And I'll be able to give you some feedback on what you write if you do that. Also, let me know if you do send it in, if you're happy for me to read it out next time. Now, I'll only be able to read out a very few of these because there won't be time probably to read out lots if lots get sent in. So I can't promise that I'll read out your work next time, but do let me know if you're happy for me to, and hopefully I'll be able to read out one or two at the beginning of the next session, which should be in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, young writers, well done. I hope you've enjoyed today's video session, and I'll look forward to making another one in a couple of weeks' time and hearing from you in the meantime. All right, all the best. Bye.